Wars are dreadful and tragic, not only for the men and women who go to war, but also for the wives, mothers, fathers and loved ones who stay at home. This poem centres on a widower whose only son Joe volunteered to go to war in 1915. A father who refused to believe that his son would not be coming home. The train was late at Gunningbland. Old Ozzy Wood stepped from his dray and headed down the street. His Kelpie dog fell in behind his master's weary feet. Dust caught in the old man's throat. Flies blinded out his eyes. The train was late at Gunningbland, its customary tardy stand. It came as no surprise. He stopped beside the wheat silo and settled by a log to view the train's arrival, he and his Kelpie dog, who nestled by the old man's side, for he sensed his master's plight. Ozzy raised his hat to rub his head. "The train is late, old boy," he said, as well he might. Ozzy Woods was born and bred the other side of Parks. In the wheat belt band of Gunningbland was where he left his marks. Near 60 long hard slogging years he'd worked the black rich soil, by bagging wheat and pushing plough, his body bent, disfigured now, his legacy of toil. He had known the best and worst, and he had known the pain when crops were ploughed back in the soil but for the want of rain. But nothing else could near compare, the sorrow nor the blow. Each Christmas Eve he'd meet the train, expectantly, alas in vain, to meet his soldier Joe. They sent his Joe, his only son, to a far and distant land, to fight for king and country with a mate from Gunningbland. He wrote his dad of sterling blokes of fun and playful times. He'd not write of death nor fear, nor the dangers ever near from hidden mines. Joe knew his dad was troubled by him being over there. Not wanting to alarm him, he chose his words with care. He penned his chosen message in a sure and steady hand. He'd addressed his final letter, not for the want of knowing better, care of Dad of Gunningbland. Through time the words began to fade, the letter worn and brown. Old Ozzy couldn't leave it be, couldn't bear to put it down. 1,000 times he'd read it through, till he'd learned it off by heart. His son Joe's promise he repeats, till tears of longing stroke his cheeks. And this is it in part. "I'm writing, Dad, with all good news. And Dad, would you believe, I'll be home for sure and cert, home for Christmas Eve. I can't wait to see your smile, to clasp your sturdy hand. Please meet me, Dad, when the train pulls in, midst the dust and haze and din at Gunningbland." A whistle broke his earnest thoughts, and squinting through the haze, his old and weather-beaten face, which had seen much better days, turned to face the western sky from where the train would come. He saw the smoke rise as before. Could this, the year of 34, deliver him his son? For 16 years he'd met this train, expectant for his Joe, drawn by fearful apprehension, demanding that he show. He'd not accept within himself, nor would he dare be told, that Joe his son would not appear, lest a strange, engulfing fear take hold. The train, now late at Gunningbland, came steaming through the drop, the engine driver breaking abruptly to a stop. The Kelpie raised from slumber brushed against his thigh, as though he understood the need to comfort and to indeed keep a watchful eye. The old man searched with misty eyes as memories took hold. Despite the scorching midday sun, his hands felt chilling cold. The driver took the mailbag off and hung it on a rail. He looked to Ozzy, whom he knew, aware that any wave he threw would be to no avail. Old Ozzy stood there numbed and still in the dust at Gunningbland. Long since the train's departure he had held his stand. His old eyes filled with tears, his heart filled with dismay. Disheartened, he was reeling from a familiar sinking feeling. His face was ashen grey. His kelpie whimpered softly and broke the old man's dread. A large hand, gnarled and calloused, moved to the kelpie's head. "We'd better get on home, old mate. There's nothing more to see." He stumbled just a step or two, then stiffened as he was prone to do. Next Christmas Eve, maybe. They found old Ozzy's body lying on his kitchen floor. They took a while determining he'd died 2 months before. They also found his kelpie dog, who refused to leave his side. He'd stayed with Ozzy till the end, as only faithful dogs befriend. He died where Ozzy died. An old and crumpled telegram lay where Ozzy fell. The message thereon finished him, as far as they could tell. It was stamped the War Department. It wore official crest. Old Ozzy learned his Joe was dead. Killed in action, so it said. He'd not read the rest. It's not known why Ozzy chose to read this telegram at last. It held it left unopened. Those 16 years had passed. They say he died most instantly. It's not hard to understand. No more will Ozzy grieve, nor meet the train next Christmas Eve at Gunningbland.